Bleach Bros podcast is proud to align itself with Jerky Pro, a beef jerky manufacturer established by military and paramilitary veterans.
Available in 3-ounce or 1-pound bags with great flavors such as honey glazed, teriyaki, red hot, apple cinnamon, original, peppered, sweet barbecue, and if you're ballsy enough, nuclear.
Be sure to use our promo code to get some of the best jerky on the market. Use Bleach Bros 5, all lowercase, to take advantage of this offer today.
Hi, this is Colin.
And this is Paul.
We are the hosts of Seismic Cinema Podcast.
You are now listening to the Bleach Bros with B-Word and Jake the Hater, and you're in for an absolute belter of a show.
Thanks for all the dirty talk. Come back and get sanitized.
Welcome into the Bleach Brothers podcast. This is Jake the Hater here with my best friend, my bestie, my what do the teenage girls say? My BFF, my FFF.
I don't know.
My fat friend for life.
There we go. And funny thing is, and you know, for everybody listening to my voice, I'm sorry, but that's the way life works. We actually in high school we're going to do a talent show where it was going to be the Fat and Fat show. It was going to be the FAT and the PHAT. And we never got to that. But I still think someday that in an alternate life that would have been really fun.
Well, that's like when we performed, remember in choir when we performed the Gorillaz song, Clint Eastwood together?
Yeah.
That was a good fun, where I did the rap and you sang, and it made all the girls wet, all 5 of them in the class. I think it made Butt Gizzard wet, too.
Probably. Yeah, I think it didn't take much to get Butt Gizzard wet back then, though.
No, ever since you pushed him around in 3rd grade, you were his dom. Yeah, I'll just say. Oh, speaking of dom, I decided to work really hard yesterday. Sorry if work is listening, but took the wife on a date. Okay, went and saw a movie. Went and saw Guardians of the Galaxy. One thing that pisses me off, B-Word, is how come every movie now has 20 to 30 minutes of trailers? I know that we used to say like, "Oh, I love trailers. I can't wait to see what's coming out." But now you sit down, the movie start time's 11:50, and by the time the movie's actually rolling, it's like 12:35. Like, what the fuck?
I think that's probably 2 different things, to be honest with you, because number one, I've gone to some movies where there's only been 1 or 2 trailers, and then I go to other movies where there's been like 17 trailers. Now, granted, 17 is being outrageous there,
egregious,
but the point is still the same. I don't know if it depends on like the size of the movie that's coming out. Like if it's supposed to be a blockbuster, that they just pack it full of trailers in hopes that you get multiple eyes on it, or I don't know how that works. But yeah, I'm okay with trailers, dude. I just don't want to see them all the time.
Right. Well, that's the thing. It was like funny because my wife was talking. Well, cliffhanger to everybody when I said my wife and I said Dom. What I was going to talk about was the Fast and Furious new one or whatever, Fast X or whatever the fuck it is in your family. Not my wife being a dominatrix and pegging me. So cliffhanger alert. Don't get too excited and get a butt gizzard wet.
Right.
But it's the point that like. I'm watching them, and my wife's like, "Oh, we need to take the kids to the movie this summer. Where are the kids' trailers?" And I said, "Well, for marketing purposes, they don't put out kids' trailers for like until it's like out before a month because they'll lose their attention span. But for like nerds like me and you, they can show me a Doctor Strange 4 trailer that's coming out in 2 years, and I'm happy." But I guess my point is like I'm watching the trailers going, that one's not coming out till then. That one's not coming out till then. This one's coming out like next week. This one's already out. Why do I fucking care? So I guess it was just more like just attach trailers to the movie that match. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just give me, like, the Flash trailer was before Guardians 3, and it was great. I was like, okay, cool. And then there were some other ones. I'm like, why? And then I saw a Fast X trailer, which I haven't watched any of that franchise, really. And I just was like, what the hell happened?
Honestly, that series was pretty good for like the first 3 movies, maybe the first 4 movies. And then it just got way out there. And it's become all space age and it's not believable anymore. But you've got this whole underlying thing of family and all this sort of stuff. And it just, honestly, dude, I'm just over it. I'm just totally over it.
Okay, I'm making sure I wasn't the only one. But speaking of movies, though, we both went and saw another movie.
We did.
Evil Dead Rise.
Yeah,
Now,
so you went and saw this with your daughter. She really wanted to see it, right?
So my oldest loves horror movies. Like, she just thinks they're her jam. I remember, like, I can tell when she logs into my Netflix account because I gave her own, like, everybody has their own little icon or whatever. It's all horror movies on my thing after that. Like, and it's a lot of those crappy ones. Like, you remember when you'd walk into Blockbuster and you'd see like the main horror film, and then you'd go next and it'd be like The Snowman, and it'd be like a weird, crappy like cover. And so I don't know. I just was like, okay. So she's like, I really want to see either that movie or the first I don't know, some exorcism, the priest exorcism or something. Something about an exorcism with a pastor or a priest. And so I was like, okay, I'll go see Evil Dead Rise because I don't know why I got sucked into those trailer like marketing things. Like, I was interested in the mom like creeping out and being freaky.
Okay.
And I was like, okay. So on the way, I was talking to my daughter, and she's 15. So I'm like, okay, she's old enough to be able to go see these things. And regardless, here's the thing, B-Word, if I'm not taking her, she's gonna find a way to watch it. And so as a parent, you try to take control of moments sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I know they're going to do it. Now, like, smoking cigarettes and that is different. Like, oh, I know she's going to, so let her smoke in front of me. No, but she's going to go watch this fucking movie. So I decided, why not make it a daddy-daughter date? We'll go watch it. I'll go and see something that she's interested in that I have no interest in at all and just try to relate, right? So on the way, I was like, why do you like horror? And she goes, oh, I like when you get scared and like the thrill of it and all that. So I was like, okay, so you're a legit fan. Like, it's like, I love creature features because I want to see a giant monster, right? I went and saw it, and I know we're going to get into a review later, but you went and saw it. Now, did you go see it because you're a fan of horror? Or did you go see it because I asked you to?
Actually, no. I mean, I offered to go see it because I knew you were going to see it with your daughter, and it gave us something to talk about because, as we've talked about already, I was out of town, and so trying to create content that's relative, number one, and number two, that's consistent. We're always having an ongoing conversation of what's the next topic that we want to talk about. And so being that you were going to go see this movie, I obviously love to go see the movies. It just ended up being one of those things. I do want to go back to the whole trailer thing of it all, though. I did find it weird when I went to go see Evil Dead that they actually had non-horror trailers for the film.
Right.
And normally when you go to a horror film, it's all horror trailers. And I just thought that was kind of odd. I will say that when I heard that you were going to take Lila to this, it reminded me of your movie Hereditary. Like, Hereditary is that movie that you say that fucked you up a little bit because of the way that I don't know if it was the mom or what that particular character was in Hereditary acted, where her body just like morphed into different ways. And I just kind of found like this was that to me. I felt like this was very much like an A24 horror film. And I enjoyed it. It had a beginning, middle, and an end, and it was very predictable. But for what it was, I did enjoy it. I did realize going into this though that I have never seen any of the Evil Deads, like none of them.
Same here. Yeah, that was a talking point. It was like, I have not. I realized going back because I was talking to my daughter, like, oh, have you watched the rest? She's like, oh, I watched this one out of it, and I've watched this one out of it. I need to watch this one, and I was just looking at her. I haven't seen any. She goes, you haven't seen any of them? I was like, no, like I'm just not that into these, and so I don't. And then she started going, well, what have you not? So me and you decided, let's talk about franchises we haven't watched, because I haven't watched a shit ton. Like, I've realized going through the list of horror movies, and it's one of those things like, I don't know if you feel this way. There's sometimes so many pop culture references to horror films that you feel like you've been a part of it without watching it.
Right.
Like Stephen King's one of those things. Like, if you watch the core base of them, I think you get the gist of all of his films. Or if you watch like Freddy, right? He's got, I don't know how many films, like 10 or whatever. If you watch 3 of them, you're like, I'm pretty much caught up. Like,
yeah,
Jason, I feel the same way.
Right.
Friday the 13th, sorry, but you know what I mean. Halloween, the same way. So it's like, but I've realized I've never fully have watched a horror franchise, a true like traditional horror franchise through. Not one that I can think of.
I've watched the oh my god, what are they? It's the possession ones. The where the husband and the wife,
Insidious people.
No, the husband and the wife, they go and they're the
Conjuring.
The Conjuring. I've watched all of those. But I'll tell you what I haven't watched that kind of threw me off. Is the Chronicles of Riddick. I've never watched any of those films.
But those are horror?
They're classified as horror.
Well, Pitch Black is sort of almost a sci-fi horror, but the rest of them almost become like a comic book. See, I've never seen them either, though, because, girl, you know this. In high school, Pitch Black was one of my favorite films.
Yeah.
And I used to rave about it, and that's before Vin Diesel got big.
Right.
And then he got big, and I felt like all they did with Riddick was cash grab it. And I'm like, why? Like, that's why I refused to watch him for that reason, because I'm like, it's not going to be the same fucking film. Like, the creatures in that movie are great. The suspense is great. I mean, yeah, and that's what a point I was going to ask you is what classifies horror, right?
See, for me, horror, I don't really like horror where it's all like bloody and gory. I like it where it's spiritual, I guess, where you're dealing with ghosts or hauntings or
an entity beyond your control.
Possessions, different things like that. So, that's one of the reasons why I like the Paranormal Activity franchise. I did like that for a certain level of time, but then I had to fall off the train on that one. The other one was Final Destination. Like I've seen all of the Final Destinations. Final Destination was incredible. And the reason why I think it was incredible is because it came out when we were teenagers. And the very first movie, the premise was that, these teenagers are going to go up on a plane and a guy has a premonition and all of a sudden, like everybody gets removed from the plane. But what I found interesting is that you can't escape death. And so that was the big moral of that. So I really enjoyed that. I also like Stephen King movies. I just think that they're creative.
Right. Me too.
I think that they're very well done. But just generically, if you're going to tell me, oh, let's watch a horror movie, I would much rather watch an old campy horror film than I would like some new bloodfest gore fucking we're going to smash heads type thing.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree with you because when I hear horror, I imagine a crappy cover, a guy with a hook, too much blood, everybody's going to die, or I imagine the top three guys, right? Like Freddy, Jason, and Michael. That's what I think of with horror, which I think would amaze you. My wife was a huge horror fan growing up. Like that's all she watched with her grandpa. And so she's like, oh, because I've never seen Child's Play. She's like, you've never seen it. I was like, no. She's like, you haven't seen this. And so like, I've never seen any Children of the Corn. Like I'm just not interested in that. And it's not that I get afraid because me, I don't. When I do, I tell you, like Hereditary, that was a film I think that got me. Because horror films for me, I like the weird, like A24, like Midsummer, like so I want it to be so fucked up, like it ruins a person. Like that's the type of horror I want it to be so twisted that you're like, why would anybody think to make that? Right. I want it to be so bad too that I'll watch it once and I never need to see it again because it's embedded in my brain. Like The Hills Have Eyes, right? Was one of those films, like the scene where he's like sucking the mom's tit and she's got the gun to his head and stuff. That scene is so fucked up that I'm like, I never need to see that, but I'll never forget that scene. I'll never need to watch The Human Centipede again. Like, I never need to see those films. I didn't like The Human Centipede. I'm just going to say that. But you know what I mean? Like, that's how I want a horror film to be. I don't want it to be like something I can watch over and over again because I don't like horror porn. I don't like the over gore. On that other side, if I do watch, I want it to be campy. Like, I can watch Scream over and over.
Oh, see, that's exactly what I was just going to bring up. I love the Scream franchise.
I can watch Friday the 13th over and over.
Yeah.
Like the original. I can watch the original Nightmare on Elm Street over and over again. So like that's the other realm I go. Because I guess for me, Scream is my favorite, for modern for us, but I've never seen all of them.
So I have now seen all of them only because I started watching them last year, the ones that I missed after whatever the Scream 5 or whatever it was that came out. And I did watch the new one and I really enjoyed that. But you remember when we were growing up, it was Scream, and then it was I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Right.
Those two were Your Theory of Two, right? And they even had some staff and stuff from both of them that crossed over. Which one did you like originally? Just not going with the franchise, just going with that first movie. You were a Scream person?
Scream. Here's the thing. I love Jennifer Love Huge Tits. Other than that, I love Scream. I liked the premise of Scream better. I thought it was more well done. The casting was spot on. And here's the thing. If you watch them side by side, Scream did something that films weren't doing at the time. It wasn't predictable. It wasn't the same. And I Know What You Did Last Summer was like, you could watch it and be like, I know where this is going. Like, It was very predictable comparatively. Like, it wasn't as creative in my opinion.
So what what horror franchise do you think has the best sequel or the best remake?
So for me, I went my route of sci-fi horror is probably the other one that I really love, and for me, The Thing is probably one of my favorite movies of all time. We talked about it in the 80s films. But the thing is, there's another Thing that came out in the 2000s that's like a remake sequel.
Okay.
The same name, which is also excellent in my opinion, because it's a prequel, sequel, remake, if that makes sense. So it's the same name. It's because you remember The Thing when the dogs run up. I'm sure you haven't seen the new one, have you?
No.
So the dog running up, it's the story of where that dog comes from
Okay.
the other base, the Russian side.
Okay.
Great film as well. But comparatively to the 1950s film, it's head and shoulders amazing. John Carpenter's vision was fucking phenomenal for that. Another one that I'd mention with that is The Fly. The Fly was a remake, and that to me is like a sci-fi horror film.
Right.
And when they redid that movie is excellent. 13 Ghosts was one of those sneaky, like, you know, that film that you love and you don't know if everybody else does, but then you find out friends like it. You're like, yeah, it's a pretty cool film. Like
I think I've watched
campy
that
and
one.
weird.
Is that where it's got like the big fat blobby guy and it's got like all these other creatures? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's got the angry princess. It's got the guy with the nails all through his body. It's that glass house with all that. It's just different. But I mean, the remake, because that's a remake of a Ghost of Haunted Mansion or something like that. And that's excellent. And so like that's what I look at. I went more for like really, really old films that got remade in the 80s, maybe 90s, maybe early 2000s, you know, within that time frame.
Okay.
To make it more relevant to us and better. Because like 13 Ghosts, for example, they use technology. They made the movie relatable more to our generation than if you watch that old one. Like a perfect example was growing up, my dad owned a lot of VHSs, and one day we'll get into those stories. But there was a movie called A House on Haunted Hill. And it was like the really old like 40s film or whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember watching it with my dad, and I was like 8 or 9, and I just at the end like this fake skeleton comes out of this swamp in the bottom of the house and scares this woman. And I look at my dad and I go, was this scary? He goes, oh, when we were kids, yeah, this was scary. And then they remade it a few years later. And the remake, because I was young, I was maybe like 12, was scary to me because that was that time frame remember when horror movies, like when we were just becoming teenagers, were doing that really fast movement thing. Like they would shake their faces really fast. They did that a lot in that movie. Now, mind you, it's not a great film, but comparatively, it's better than the original, like old ass, like Walt Disney style, like, you know, horror from the 30s and 40s. That's what I looked at. I had a hard time because I don't go out and seek a lot of them. Like The Hills Have Eyes is another one. That's a remake, and I thought they did a better job. Like I Am Legend, I don't count as a horror film, and I didn't know it was a remake at the time. And I'm one of these, B-word, if you find out, like, I didn't know The Thing was a remake, and then I go back and I watch it because I want to see what source material they got it from. Do you do the same?
Yeah, I mean, I try to research the movie, especially if it's one that I like, just to try to see where the inspiration comes from or anything like that. And yeah, that's where I found out that The Thing was a remake as well. That's also where I found out where the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I'm sorry, not the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where the Blob was a remake. And that was interesting to me because the Blob, the one that came out in 88 or something like that. That one was one that I was like, holy shit, this is a really weird movie, right? But I do think that one of the best remakes, at least modern remakes, is actually Child's Play. It came out in 2019. The reason why I think it's good, I like the original one.
Because Aubrey Plaza, she's so hot.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's that.
Okay.
But the other than that, Child's Play became very, very campy in what it was doing. The original Child's Play was freaky. It was different. It was new. But as it continued, you had The Bride of Chucky, and you had all these different things. And I remember there was a scene, and I don't remember if it was in The Bride of Chucky or which one directly it was, but where Chucky and his bride are getting ready to have sex. And she's like, baby, do you have a rubber? And he's like, baby, look at me. I'm all rubber. And like, I remember laughing at that, thinking that, oh my God, that's so fucking stupid. But the point of it was like, that's where the writing started to head down. It was no longer like horror. It was just like campy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's when, because you see the same thing with Friday the 13th, where they see a character is bigger than the franchise itself, if that makes sense. Like, it's the character rather than, like, all right, like, look at it. When you say it, do you call it or do you call it Nightmare on Elm Street? Not Friday the 13th, sorry. Do you call it Nightmare on Elm Street, or do you call it Freddy movies? See what I mean? There's a lot of people that just go, oh, I watch all the Freddy films. Like, and that's the point. Like, when we were kids, everybody would say, oh, did you see Chucky's movie? Like, you didn't say, oh, I went and saw Child's Play 4. Like, people would say, oh, I went and saw the newest Chucky movie. And so I think that's a point to be made. Like, the only one that didn't do it was Jason, because he doesn't fucking talk. If he talked, there would have been jokes like that too. Now, mind you, I appreciate Freddy's humor, right? Like, one of my favorite ones was in Freddy versus Jason when he's going to kill the black chick and he goes, oh, I like dark meat. Like, that is probably one of the funniest things that they could not get away with now. And it's like, that's Freddy's character, and I enjoy that. Now, if you compare the first Nightmare on Elm Street to like the sixth one, they're head and shoulders different from each other.
Oh, of
like
course.
The same thing. The campiness gets all over the place. The jokes go everywhere. Like, let's just make this one-liners and then somebody die. And I think that's where horror movies got lost and they had to restart. And that's where Scream came out, where it was like, yeah. But speaking of Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street, fuck, I keep doing that. Wes Craven's New Nightmare was probably one of my favorite ones, where it was like he was trying to reimagine it, because it was also that let's break the fourth wall and make it like about making a horror film and then how it becomes reality. And then the most disappointing was when they redid it again, and I was so excited. I think that was like 2011, maybe 2010 they were coming out, and they did a Nightmare on Elm Street, and then they tried to make it too serious and too dark, and it just wasn't fun. It wasn't, and I'm not saying it needs to be fun, but you know what I mean? It wasn't a great film, and I feel like they keep going down that route. Like, I did not like Rob Zombie's Halloweens.
See, like, that's the other thing that I was going to bring up, is that I think that Rob Zombie's a good horror director, but I do think that specific to Halloween, he went in an entirely different direction. And he took the universe on a completely different trajectory. And if you look at like just how to watch the Halloween franchise, that part of the franchise is almost not even connected to any of the other Halloweens. And for me, I like it where there is the connection to it. Like, it doesn't have to be the same characters, but I would like the connection to it. Not a horror film, of course, but The Mask with Jim Carrey. You had the Son of the Mask, I think, and then you had another spinoff, and they all tied to the same characters, and I appreciate that. The whole Scream franchise, the villain from Scream always has to do. It's almost like a Scooby movie, where, you know, I'm going to get those meddling kids. It's somebody who's originally connected to somebody from one of those stories. So I do think that there's an opportunity in the horror realm to be able to get that done. I have a really hard time though with the Halloween franchise.
Do you feel though that we're like those old get off my lawn guys now at the point of our age? Like imagine this. Like, when I was bitching about A House on a Haunted Hill, right? My grandparents were like, that's a great film. Your new stuff sucks. Like, do you feel like we're so connected to the 80s and 90s horror films that we grew up with, right, and watched, that anything, like if they remake another Nightmare on Elm Street, or you know, let's say they decide in 2 years they're going to do another I Know You Did Last Summer and redo it, right? Do you feel that you're going to be like the get off my lawn, it'll never beat it? Like, or do you give it a chance?
Does the new I Know What You Did Last Summer include Jennifer Love Huge Tits?
It's going to, because the other things studios have realized is they got to do the nostalgic thing for us, so they have to have her come back.
Then I'm going to beat it to that movie, and I'll enjoy it.
I'm disappointed and proud at you at the same time. Like, I want to be mad, but I'm also going because I'm going to beat it too.
Yeah,
I know. I'll take the left one.
Right? Exactly. Exactly. Well, with that, let's take a real quick break, and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Sophie, and I haven't seen a lot of movies.
Hi, I'm Paul, and I'm here to help with that.
And we are SP Film Viewers.
Each week, we take a deep dive into films that Sophie is seeing for the first time, some of which are deemed classics, some of which are my favourites, and some are just to try and get a reaction from her.
We don't take ourselves too seriously, but we have a lot of fun talking about what we've watched.
And we hope you have fun listening to our light-hearted thoughts and ramblings on this cinematic journey.
So tune in every Thursday on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts from.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Mike.
I'm Tabby.
And we're the Grace Taproom Podcast. Be sure to check out our link tree at linktr.ee/Grace Taproom Podcast 2.
There you can find our partnership with Hollowed Sense, buy us a coffee because we definitely need it, all of our socials, listening platforms, and our merch store.
And if you love our show enough, please feel free to subscribe to our Patreon. We have 3 amazing tiers starting from $3, $5, and $10 with a bunch of great content all over the place.
Thanks for listening, guys. Don't text and drive, don't drink and drive. Always drink responsibly.
You heard her. Do it.
Taproom closed.
Welcome back into the Bleach Brothers podcast. I want to apologize to the fans a tiny bit. If you feel like we're not horror experts, I'm just gonna be fucking frank with you. We're not. We're doing our best with what we know and how we know. So give it, leave us some likes, comments, subscribe, do that, bitch at us, yell at us. We don't care. Send us some DMs. Don't just slide into them trying to get B-words cock, Robert the Bear. The whole point of this, though, was we went and saw Evil Dead Rise. And B-word, I want to get your take on the movie and a little review of it. What you thought? What'd you go in like thinking? The whole gamut of it.
So again, we talked about at the beginning that I hadn't actually seen the franchise. I didn't really know what to expect. I knew it came from Sam Raimi, who's obviously very adept at horror films. I didn't, not knowing the franchise, I knew that Bruce Campbell was in it, so I was kind of thinking, okay, is he going to come back into this? Like, how's that going to work? And he didn't, and that's fine. But based off of what I saw off of the commercials, you basically saw this mom, this mom who died, and she's possessed. Her body's possessed by whatever the being is, and then from there, they are then going out and murdering, the family members. That's what I knew going into it. As we went through the movie, and there's a little spoilers here, so just be careful if you don't want it ruined. But it basically all stems from the mom, who's the sister to this gal. They have kind of this broken relationship, the sisters do, and the mom and her husband have split up, and the dad has left the home and leaving the 3 kids, and all 3 kids are going through some different life battles and some different things like that. Long story short, an earthquake takes place. They're located in California. It unlocks a crypt, basically, which used to be a bank vault. And one of the kids goes and explores and identifies this book. Turns out that this book is haunted, or it's evil, or it's whatever. And that begins how this whole thing happens.
Yeah, the Book of the Dead.
Yeah. So I thought up until that point, okay, they're building a good story. I obviously I didn't have to watch any of the movies to be able to understand it. So that was good. Separately though, I thought it was all predictable. I thought from the moment that the mom died, or that she was possessed, I basically knew that what was going to happen from there. I knew what was going to take place from start to finish. The one thing that I didn't know was that there was the entry scene. So the entry scene when they were at the beach house, whatever, I didn't know how that tied to the family. And at the very end, you figure out how that ties to the family. It really doesn't tie to the family, but you figure that out. For that, I was like, okay, that's just kind of a weird opening and closing of this film. Overall, I think it did what it was supposed to do. I enjoyed the movie. It wasn't like I had a bad time watching the movie. I'd probably give it a B-, just off of my own grades. I was a little too bloody and gory for me. And because it was predictable, I didn't really find myself surprised in any way, or haunted in any way, or scared in any way. But that's kind of my review. What about you?
Knowing me, I just jump into it. Originally, I would have given it like a C or a C+. The one thing that brought me over it, though, was the acting, because I thought the people that were involved did phenomenal.
Right.
I thought the mother who was possessed, she did an amazing job in that film. I do agree it was predictable. I felt it was like, okay, here we go. They're going to find something. It's going to affect something. I went into it a little worried because I don't like child like horror, like kids getting killed and stuff. And I heard there was a lot of that, which when I watched it was like, it wasn't as bad. I don't know, because then I also realized like that line was drawn, right? Another line was drawn, like, what age am I okay with a kid dying? Like, and I found that out about myself. So I'll cut it off at about 13. You can die, and that younger, then I get a little sad. But it was the point that one thing I loved is they didn't do the whole, like, there's a redeeming thing at the end of this. Like, everybody's going to be saved. It's spoiler, but fuck it. Everybody's going to die. We don't care who dies. We don't care who's involved. Like, because that's one thing that usually pisses me off about any type of film franchise is like, oh, everybody has to be saved. Oh, we have to do this. And it's not just for the cash grab sequel thing. It's like, let's make it a redeeming happy ending. And yeah, there's a happy ending, but it's also like a fucked up happy ending. Like at the end, like, you know, some psych evaluation is going to be happening. You know, there's some cleanup crew, all that. The other problem I usually have with films like this, and this is any type, is the realism aspect. Like, I think I like sci-fi horror because it's already beyond reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I already have to imagine something. I like possessions usually because I believe that could be a reality. But when you get to a point where there's so much going on in a building in a city and nobody's like out and about,
right?
Like nobody's in the parking, like, you know what I mean? And you're like, how is no, like, I think that's why they usually would put them like in the middle of nowhere in the woods, because it's an isolated incident.
Well, all of a sudden when the mom was fisted by everybody, and then she turns out that she was like this blob full of fists, I was just like,
yeah, that's
weird.
That sounds like a porn stash movie.
It is.
But it's that where it's like, it was, they tried to make an isolated incident in an unisolated area, which they did a good job of that. So I'll give them that. I did enjoy that, you know, they were listening to the record and like it was telling the story of where this book came from and how you know, how there was no way out. So after all that, and after seeing the way too much gore and way too much violence, which I expected to have, a lot of blood, there wasn't as much predictability as I think you're saying. I think there were certain people that I saw predictability, but then other ones, like when the daughter got possessed, I was like, I didn't see that one coming. Like that was out of left field for me. And I thought she did a great job acting at that point. I did have a question for Jordan, the gnome, when I called him on the phone. I was like, how do these kids act in these movies and not get fucked up?
Yeah.
Like, I understand Hollywood has creative ways to keep them like, but I could not imagine being a 7-year-old in a cast in a film like this and be like coming out normal, if that makes sense, B-word. Like I'm not, but you know what I mean? Like, how do you film that? I don't know. I guess I agree with you. The opening scene, where does it connect? That's where I started.
Right.
And then when it did connect at the end, I was more pissed off than anything because I was like, that's so stupid, because you had stupid people like doing stupid things.
Right.
But I'd give it a B. I'd give it a B plus. And mainly that's just because acting like brought it up. And it wasn't too long. It didn't try to do too much. Like, I appreciate when a film knows what it is, just like when people know what they are. It knew what it was, and it didn't try to like, hey, let's make this serious, or hey, let's try. They just hit the fucking throttle and gave you the movie, and then it was done. I was like, okay, cool. I'm cool with that. And it can have a continuation like they all do. I heard it connects to the last Evil Dead remake.
It probably does, yeah.
Which now I'm interested to go watch, because I remember when that trailer came out, I was interested, but I never saw it. But yeah, I'd give it a B plus. It wasn't the worst horror movie I've ever seen. Would I watch it again? Maybe. I mean, it depends on the crowd, but I mean, it wasn't the best horror movie ever, but for what it was, what it gave me, the joy on my daughter's face, which my favorite thing was were you scared? And she goes, no. She goes, but I almost puked a few times. I went, oh. She goes, it was awesome. I'm like, okay, that helped raise the bar.
See, and I need to talk with you about puking, because while I was in New Hampshire, we ended up watching this movie called hold on, I gotta look this up. It's Art the Clown, ultimately. And Art the Clown.
Oh, the Terrifier.
The Terrifier. So we watched the Terrifier, the very first one. I'd never watched this shit before in my life. And it was creepy. It was weird. But dude, it was gory to be gory. And like the first one, I was like, wow, that was like a lot of blood, a lot of guts coming out of this. And then the second one comes on, and I'd never seen it. My brother had seen it. And so my mom goes, is the second one like less gory? And my brother's like, yeah. Well, little did I know he's being rhetorical. Dude, I'm watching some of this shit. I'm like, oh my God. And it reminded me because the Terrifier 3 just recently came out. And I guess there's people who have actually thrown up in the theaters that they get so grossed out about it. What's your feeling on that? Like for me, I am not about that life. I don't need to see the human centipede. I don't need to see things that I feel like I can taste. And for this movie, I was like, no, this is disgusting.
I've realized I have a strong stomach because I don't really get that. I get the wince, like if something looks so painful, like if you stab somebody in the eye, I'm gonna be like, oh, right. But I've never gotten to the moment to almost throw up, but I get around that. Like my wife's that way. I don't enjoy it. I mean, because that's how I feel Saw films went. That's another franchise I never followed all the way through,
right?
But I felt like it became horror porn. That reminds The Collector was a movie that I watched once where it was like, it just felt like, hey, let's see how many ways we can kill a human being and how much blood comes out. And I feel like some directors go that route. I don't think it's necessary, but I understand it because some people want it and some people need it. The puking aspect for me, I wouldn't. So I don't know. I mean, but like I said, my daughter thought it would be cool if she did. So I guess some people enjoy that, and so good for them. Why did you watch The Terrifier? Like whose idea was this?
Honestly, it was my dad's because so we were in the living room of the Airbnb, and my dad wanted to watch a movie with my daughter. And so all of us just decided that we would watch a movie. Well, the only thing that they had for streaming was Amazon. And for some reason this came up, which is another funny story too, because my dad uses my Amazon account. And so, when you use Amazon, you get like recommendations on what you should watch next.
Yeah. Like when my daughter uses my Netflix, it's all horror, right?
So I have like, sexy strippers from like Horrorville that show up as my recommendations on here.
Zombievers.
Yeah. Zombievers or something. So, I did find that kind of ironic and funny that he chose to watch, a horror on Amazon, but that's where this came from. And my daughter, Rebecca, she watched it and she enjoyed it. My brother, he liked it as well. My mom, not so much. Me, I could take it or leave it, but just the amount of gore that was there, I was just like, dude, that's what they were going for. They were going for the gore moments. They weren't going for the storyline or the plot. It was just, they were just trying to go for the gore.
Right. Yeah. Let's see how many ways a human can die and how much blood comes out of them. Speaking of which, making something come out of somebody. Bjorn, I want to talk to you about something with horror people. Let's say you're in a movie and you have to get fucked or fuck a horror villain. I want you to pick one male and one female horror villain that you have to fuck or get fucked by or whatever, and describe the circumstance. And essentially, because, we're not biologists here, but we understand the two genders. Who and why? What's happening?
So I'm going to have to go with, for my female, Baby Firefly, played by Sherry Moon Zombie, out of House of a Thousand Corpses. Just because I think Sherry Moon Zombie is kind of hot. So,
do you really?
Yeah, I've got kind of a thing for her. She's hot in like a meth head kind of way.
Yeah, that's like a Pahrump. Smoked too many cigarettes, was outside the stagecoach. You picked her up after having too many drinks, and she wants to go to the cotton picking too.
Exactly.
And instead, you go down and cotton picking her panties off.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then I think for the male, because I have to choose because it's going to happen. I'm going to go with the villain in Scream 1. I don't remember his name, but it was
the one that almost looks like Tom Cruise.
The
hot one.
The actor is Skeet Ulrich.
Yeah, Skeet Ulrich.
Yeah, Ulrich. So yeah, that's who I would go with.
Why?
Just because. I mean, if he's going to stab me, he's going to stab me. Let's just do it.
Are you letting him wear Ghostface while he's doing it, or?
Yeah. Because I want my imagination to run wild. Like, don't talk to me. Wear the mask. Like, just stab me. Let's go, and then let's just do it.
So, are you under the notion? Do you think that all the horror men villains that you go against are gonna fuck you? You don't get to fuck any. Like, they're not gonna be like, I'm gonna lay on my back and you're gonna do me, daddy, or I stab you in the face.
I don't really know that I want to peel that onion there, Jake.
All right, fine. For me, number one is the angry princess from 13 Ghosts.
Really? All right.
Yeah, and here's why. She's quiet. I know she's gonna kill me afterwards. So it's like fucking a praying mantis, which I sent you mantis porn before, which I did not realize
weird.
Was a thing,
Yeah,
which was disgusting. I was so ashamed of myself afterwards, which I sent it to the dads on Dayquil Boys too, just because somebody else had a fucking relish in that with us. But I feel like she's gonna bite my head off when we're done, and it's just over with. Like at least I got a nuts and nut homie, and at least I died.
right.
Like, that's how I look at it. Right. There's less talking too. I know she's not gonna make me a sandwich, but she does have a butcher knife, so maybe afterwards she could. And then Freddy Krueger is going to sort of the same way of the glove stabbing, like just gonna get fisted in the back. But I just feel like ever since I saw him swallow the whole bed scene, I realize he's my horror soulmate. Like he can actually do what I've asked people to do for me before.
And we're off. Wow.
I'm peeling the onion. B-word.
Wow. We made it, Jake. We've made it. This is our milestone moment.
I am so proud of this moment. I hope somebody takes me and photoshops me as the bed and Freddy's just swallowing me.
You boys over there at Porn Stash, I'm gonna task you with that. Yeah, that's wow. Good for you, buddy. Good for you.
Yep.
So tell me this, man. So what is the type of horror that you like the best?
If I ranked them, one for me would be sci-fi horror. Like even Alien is considered a horror film, the first one. Like I said, it takes me out of this reality. I love creature features. I love because usually when you're gonna have a sci-fi horror, besides Event Horizon, which is one of the greatest sci-fi horror films in my opinion, I will say that you typically get an alien entity, some kind of creature, something other out of this world. But it's beyond that scope. And so I love that. It combines probably all of my favorite things. It combines campy, like B film, like, you know what I mean? That type of shit. Like, you know me, I like bad movies. It combines a creature and it combines a little bit of like storyline, scary aspects, stuff like that. So sci-fi horror would be number one. Number two is anything by A24. I really like those weird Midsummer, Hereditary type of unpredictable, off the wall, catch you off guard horror films that make you feel uncomfortable on the inside and you don't even know why. And if you do, you're still confused by it. And then after that, I guess it would be I have to fall in love with the villain. So just like I said, I want Freddy to swallow me. It's the sense like when we've ranked the top three in 2 Freddy's 1 Cup episode, Freddy's my guy. So it's like I'll watch almost all of his films, right? Like, I'll watch most of Ghostface films. I haven't watched all of them. Everybody can call me out for that. But, like, I would go for Scream over the Hook guy from I Know What You Did, some Ice Pick guy or whatever. I would go for fucking Freddy over Jason. So, for me, the last one to give me the best horror film is a good character that I can relate to. Like, I know a lot of people love Jeepers Creepers, and they love that character and stuff. And I think that makes or breaks a horror film a lot of the times. Like the Terrifier, I hear that clown is like some people's new favorite coming out, right? But I don't know. I guess the last one though would be anything by Stephen King. Like, and no matter how good or bad made for TV it is or stuff, I just think his storytelling's amazing. Like the movie 1922 on Netflix is impeccable. Pet Sematary messed me up as a kid. I now have an appreciation for The Shining that I finally saw it. There's a lot that he does well, and I feel like the studios realized they did good with a few films and then just went to shit with it. Because like one of my favorite ones is The Night Flyer, which is a terrible movie. Like, it's not a terrible movie. I enjoy it, but it's one of those ones you could tell it almost seems like an X-Files episode. Like it's like that quality of like made for TV sort of horror film.
Right.
And they went down that route in like the early 90s. Like they were just really trying to cash grab on everything Stephen King has. And I wish there was a redeeming fact to bring it back. If they could do anybody horror justice and make it a little more adult, I wish it would be R.L. Stine. For all of our Goosebumps shit and make it a little more dark. Like we always talk about like, hey, let's make a dark Power Rangers film, make them adults and mature, and let's do this. And like, hey, let's make a horror Winnie the Pooh. Why don't we bring back all those Goosebumps and make those like really legit, not just the kids cash grab? Like, let's make them fucking scary.
The R.L. Stine books were intense, dude. I love those. I also loved Are You Afraid of the Dark? Did you watch that on Nickelodeon? No.
Nope. Didn't have it.
So Are You Afraid of the Dark was very much like a Tales from the Crypt kind of thing, except for it was surrounded by a campfire. So the stories start out as a campfire. So it was one of those things. So I guess if I'm going to talk about my genre of horror that I really like, I'm going to kind of put them into 5 categories. I'm going to put it into gore and disturbing, psychological, killer. So killer could be slasher or anything like that, right? Monsters or paranormal. So for me, I enjoy the paranormal more than anything else, because I do believe that there is a spiritual world, and I do think that that's a world that we don't necessarily understand. And so with that, that's something that I want to explore.
Well, let me ask you something on that, though, because like for me, paranormal, my favorite are exorcisms. So is there a type of paranormal that you like haunting more, or like ghosts coming back and possessing people, or an actual possession? Like what type of paranormal is like your, could you rank that?
That's great, because under paranormal, you can go with ghosts, you can go with hauntings, you can go with possessions, demons, witches, occult, supernatural, all that sort of stuff, right? For me, I would much rather go with like possessions, or hauntings, in that type of genre, and explore that and have a story told to me that way. To me, that just creeps me out more than the other types of subgenres, if you want to call it that.
Nice.
And then I think from there, I'd have to go with monsters, and then killers, and psychological, then gore. I can take or leave gore, to be honest with you. I do think one of the best horror films, to me, was actually, I don't know that I would even call it a horror film, but I know that it is in a genre of a horror film. It's The Silence of the Lambs. The Silence of the Lambs was done very, very well. It's a very, very much a psychological thriller. And I love that shit where it makes you think, where you never know what's coming next. And there's not necessarily a monster involved. I do like the monster ones, but I'm not as high on them as you are. But I do think that for me, the top genre would definitely be the paranormal for me in horror films.
See, I agree with you on that. I have a hard time ranking, because I did my ranking, but I mean like in subgenres, because to me it's like I more just fall in love with this aspect of or that. Do you feel as a kid though, you ever watched a film and you were scared by it, and then you were surprised to find out it wasn't a horror film?
Not necessarily. I think I've told this on the podcast before, but I was like 8 or 9 years old when I was homesick from school, and my mom went to Blockbuster, and she rented The Elephant Man because I liked the movie The Mask, or it was just called Mask. It's the Rocky Dennis story. And she also rented Stephen King's It. But these are both on VHS tapes. And the one thing that I didn't realize is that there was a second VHS tape for Stephen King's It. So when I put away the Elephant Man because I didn't like it, it was slow, it was black and white, all that sort of stuff, I ended up watching the first VHS tape of Stephen King's It, and I loved the storyline, but the fucking clown never died, because I never saw the second film. And it was only like 5 years later that I realized that there was a second film. So that motherfucker scared me all the fucking time. I used to have dreams that this cannibal fucking clown would eat me in my sleep, and oh, it was so fucking horrible. So I don't know necessarily that I found a movie that was scary that turned out not to be a horror. But that was kind of the one thing that I felt like I enjoyed a movie where it just creeped me the fuck out because it never ended.
All right. Do you watch a lot of foreign films, B-Word?
No.
Okay. Because we know me, the Hayat channel and all that. But I was going to say, because I think the second best culture to make horror films is the Japanese culture. And it's because it's interesting when you watch other cultures' horror films, right? Like what they're scared of. Like if you like, I've watched a lot of European horror films, and it seems like they love to go with like their folklore,
right?
And like older stories and stuff like that. Like let's scare our kids to not go in the woods and stuff. And I just love, because like The Ring, it reminds me of like that's an amazing remake, and Ringu, the original film, is a good film. But like I think for us, we loved, because when The Ring came out, that was a phenomenon. Like we got to be honest there. Like that little video, like it was something new that we haven't seen before. And then, of course, they try to do it with every other piece of technology we have, like cell phones and whatever. But I mean, that culture does a good job too. I guess I would be interested. I've started watching a lot more movies from Latin culture.
Okay.
And it's interesting the way their take on it, and because there's a lot of like ghosts and honor the family and stuff like that. And those have been really that's another fun way I think to get into horror, is to find a cultural aspect that you like of a different ethnicity and go watch that. And that was just something I just thought of just now.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I'm not really into, I don't mind reading subtitles, but if that's all that I have to read is the subtitles and then they don't match what the people say, it's just really hard for me to get into.
Well, dude, I'm sorry you feel like crap. I'm sorry your voice has been going out on you, but I want to thank you for still recording, because we got to get the stuff out for the people.
Oh yeah.
It's going to be a short one today, but thank you for everybody for listening to that. I mean, like we said, we know we're not experts on this, but this is our take on horror. Please let us know what you think of it. And Bieber, with that, what do you got for me?
Thanks for all the dirty talk. Come back and get sanitized.